Okay.
Chicka. Yeah.
Kill Bill and Rev. We don't suck.
Can you feel me coming in your ass tonight? Oh Lord. Oh Lord.
Oh Lord. Doo 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 doo.
Enjoy mixing that, Bill.
I can feel it coming in my ass tonight.
Oh Lord.
Oh Lord.
Oh Lord.
Oh Lord.
Do that again, but this time with passion.
Oh Lord.
Welcome back to the We Don't Suck podcast. Hey, stop it. Stop it. Sorry, my cat is pulling on my thing.
Oh, you have a cat?
I got a kitten. His name's Tama. No, his name's Tama.
Tama.
His name's Tama.
Tammy? Did you say Tammy?
His name's Tammy. His name's Timmy.
Wow, you sound awfully like me when I was on your stream the other day. That's weird.
I've been practicing my... No, I'm doing a Master Roshi voice. I don't know what you were talking about. Hey, Goku.
Oh, perfect.
Hey, Goku, get the...
Hey there, Goku.
Hey there, Goku.
I'm gonna suck your dick, Goku.
I'm gonna suck your dick, Goku. Whoa.
Did you hear any of the voice recordings that got leaked of like
Yes, I did.
it was a few months ago of all the Dragon Ball Z characters
Yeah.
saying like very wildly not politically correct shit?
Yeah. I remember it. I thought it was pretty funny.
I don't know why everyone was so upset because it's like I never in my adult life did I think that I was ever gonna hear those words come out of Goku's mouth, and it was just it was a treat for me. I didn't think it was. I mean, it's offensive. It's awful, but
Yeah, but it's kind of like, I don't know. It's, yeah. I thought it was like intentionally like bad and stupid, you know? Like,
Yeah,
I don't know.
of course.
I didn't think of it as like, oh, this is secretly what they wish the anime was. Dun-dun.
yeah, dude, fucking Sean Schimmel is sitting there just like, yeah, dude, we need more like gay bashing in Dragon Ball Z. Like we just
Not enough of that.
or like the lady who does Chi-Chi's voice. I don't know her name off the top of my head, but she's like, yeah, I really wish Gohan would fuck his mother. Like I'm very sure. Or my favorite bit was the Kami and Mr. Popo rubbing special ointment on each other. That was
Yeah.
good.
Yeah, that was good.
That's my favorite episode of Dragon Ball Z is when that happens.
Bill, what episode number are we on today, pal?
We're on number 74. That was my number when I played football.
And that's your number in terms of your age.
Thanks for being so modest with my age.
Yeah, I was trying to buy some beer with my girl. We went out today to buy some like groceries and everything, and we were like, "Oh fuck!" They restocked on Asahi, which is our favorite beer, and
Yeah.
we're like, "Oh cool, let's grab it." But we didn't have our IDs on us, and the lady who was checking us out, was clearly. I say checking us out. We were checking ourselves out, but then she had to approve the thing where it says like, "Oh, what if they're underage?"
Oh, like a self-checkout?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they're like, "Do you have ID?" And I'm like, "No, I don't, but I'm 20 something." No, I was like, "No, but we're like 27 and 28." And obviously she's not going to be like, "I believe that, pal." So she was like, "Sorry, we can't sell it to you without ID." I was like,
Oh, that's rough.
I was like, "That's fine." And in that sense, I was like, you know what? Let's wait for me to carry. And I was right, because it was the backpack ended up being heavy as is. But yeah, man,
Yeah, so you weren't getting drunk that night. That sucks, buddy. If it makes you feel any better, if it makes you feel any better whatsoever, as any consolation at all, I have not been carded for like 6 years now. However, when I went to Starbucks earlier, someone in their early 20s called me sir.
Oh,
Like
shit.
in a kind of like,
shit.
you know what I mean? Like not like sorry, sir, blah, blah, blah. But like yeah, you have a nice day, sir. Like it was kind of like he's going to die soon, you know? That kind of sir.
Yeah.
So while you have been dipped in the fountain of youth and cannot buy beer, I am 1 foot in the grave. So, you know, that's what a year's difference will do to you.
You know, it's not that I necessarily can't buy beer. It's more so I can't buy it without an ID. And it's not that I don't have alcohol at home. I have a lot of sake. It's just I like a sake.
Sure. Whatever helps you sleep better at night, buddy.
Look. You have a very youthful energy about you, but the beard, I think, helps sort of like fool people.
Make me look decrepit.
Yes, that's exactly. You took the words out of my mouth.
Honestly, dude, if I shave my beard, I will look and probably act like a baby.
Exactly, and that's what I'm saying. And I keep myself shaven because I don't like how facial hair looks on me. And which is great, you know, I get to retain the young look, and I dye my hair. I need to take a picture. I haven't dyed my hair in a couple of months now. And this may come as a surprise to our listeners that I dye my hair, but almost most of my hair now is gray.
Damn, man, why don't you fucking let it go gray? That'd be kind of tight. I'm not kidding.
I'm gonna rewind that to just a specific word, almost. Okay, I look, dude. It's not a good look.
Are you a salt and pepper daddy?
No, it looks like milk spilled on a fucking bowling ball, but like just kind of
like somebody nutted on you.
It looks like it just looks like, oh, there's not like rhyme and reason to it. It's like they'll be like, oh, here's this spot, it's just all of the hair here will be gray, but then like right next to it, all of the hair won't be gray anymore, and then you'll have black, and then like, oh, here's just again gray hair, and it don't look good. It's not a good look. It just ain't.
I didn't know that. I thought that maybe you dyed it like just for a little bit. I didn't know that you had like a lot of gray going on.
Oh no, I dye my.
I have a few little gray ones. Do
you?
Up.
I've had gray hair since I was like 15, 16, I can't recall anymore, to be honest, but it runs in the family. We look very young for a very long time, but we get gray hair early on. My brother got his first gray hair, I think, when he was 8.
Yeah.
Or 9. I'm not even kidding. You know, like we get it fairly early on, and it doesn't look flattering. If it looked flattering, I promise you I'd keep it, because, you know, like, oh shit, there goes that the fucking silver-haired rapper Rav, you know, who wouldn't want that kind of title? But alas, no. I look like an 8-ball that's been nutted on.
Why don't you dye all of your hair gray? It's like a weird power move.
But it wouldn't be dyeing then. It would be bleaching it and then dyeing it. And the problem with that, if I keep bleaching and dyeing my hair all the time, and I mean dyeing, you're not dyeing, you'd have to bleach it so hard. To make your hair look gray, you have to bleach it real hard. And if I keep doing it, I will kill my hair follicles, right? And then I don't want to go fucking bald. At least not. I mean, dude, not speed that process up.
It's gonna come for you eventually, bro. My hair's starting to thin.
Why are you saying it'll come?
Like it's already.
Why are you saying it'll come eventually? You don't know that, man. Not everybody goes bald. I mean,
yeah,
most
but
people
by the time it hits you, if it does hit you, if you just go bald randomly, which you won't, you probably won't. You know,
I might.
You haven't exhibited any kind of like thinning hair.
Not yet. Not at all. No.
My problem is like when my hair's so short anyway. That like for years and years and years you could never tell, but then like now, like when I started to grow it out more, it was like that awkward stage before I got my mom to cut my hair. It was at that awkward stage before it was like it was starting to get thicker up top, but it was like not as thick as the rest of it, and it was just like this looks bad. And I was like, I was trying to grow it out more, and I was like, this isn't good. And then like I even said something to my mom. Like I was like, yeah, I feel like my hair is like kind of thinning up in the like the middle part, you know? And then she was like, no, like it looks good. It's fine, you know? And then after she cut my hair, she was like, wow, that looks so much better. And I was like, oh.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's a thing that happens. I'm just trying to guess.
We're all going to die one day, bro. Well, my thing is if I ever start like straight up going bald, I'm just going to shave my head completely. which is like not that different from what I already get anyway.
Right.
So it's not that big of a deal for me. So it's a different struggle than what you got.
You know, I mean, it is a different struggle, but I just don't want to do anything where it's like, oh, okay, like, I'm gonna speed up my process of going bald. And who knows? Maybe I won't go bald, but if I do bleach my hair, I will go bald. You know, and all that. So I'll just let it naturally keep developing, and maybe who knows? Maybe it'll take another 10 years before it evens out, where I can have like a George Clooney-ish thing, but like, you know, with a teenage boy's face and teenage girl's upper torso.
Do you feel like you'll look super young into your like 40s and 50s?
Well, we'll see. I hope I manage to retain it into my 30s. So far,
yeah, dude. Like, I just think it'd be like real freaky if you were like 50 years old and you look like you're the age you are now. You know, because I don't think I think you look youthful, but I don't look at you and go like, oh, he's a child. You know, I don't go like, oh, he's a teenager. I think like,
but a lot of people,
you look like young 20s to me.
Oh, thank you. But the fact of the matter is, 19-year-olds at supermarkets ID me for Red Bull.
Okay, well, 19-year-olds ID everyone, if that makes you feel any better. For Red Bull, you said?
Yeah, because Red Bull here now, there's a law that you have to be 15 plus to get Red Bull. Now 15 plus, Bill, right? Do I look 14 to you? No, I don't.
Yeah, but you're also at that kind of weird, you're in that weird, like, you look youthful, and so it's kind of like people don't know what to do and they don't want to get in trouble. I think that especially younger people, like, you'll see that more. Anytime I get carded now is always a younger person who's like trying not to get in trouble. When they're like in their 30s, they don't give a fuck, bro.
That's true. Maybe, you know what? Yeah, they're just doing their jobs. I'm not blaming them. I'm just saying, you know, it seems that I still look young to people, some people at least.
I mean, if someone were to point you out and be like, look at this 14-year-old over here, and I didn't know you, I would not think like, oh, he's a 14-year-old. That would be very weird. Right.
But also, if I think most people, it's very rare that I tell people like, oh yeah, I'm in my mid to late 20s. And it's rare that they go like, oh, okay, cool, yeah. They usually go like, oh, really? Or like, huh? You know, it's like it's one or the other. And I honestly don't mind at all. I mean, like, I like to retain my youthful look. I don't take it, I genuinely don't take it as like, oh, how dare they say I look young. I think I've finally become a mother in her 30s.
A mother.
You know, just
you finally, yeah.
I've become a mother.
You finally just
where I'm just like, you know, I'm flattered if I get ID'd, okay? That's
oh yeah. So like you're like gonna be one of those like a lady never says her age types.
The
like
day that people stop IDing me, like actually it's happened a couple times where I wasn't ID'd and I was like, what? I was like,
well, you're losing it.
I was just like, what? I was like, huh? Do they just not?
How dare they?
I'm sorry. Did I just fucking age overnight? You know, like.
I always make this joke. If I ever get ID'd, which I rarely do, but if I do, I always make this joke like, oh, it's a fake ID. I'm 12.
That's funny.
And it's not a good joke. It's kind of like one of those things that you just like say just to like kind of fill the air. And I said that one time, and then someone started like looking at my ID, like
yeah. I make jokes like that all the time. Not like exactly that joke, but I usually make the joke of like whenever they're really in disbelief, they look at the card, they look at me, and they're like, "Is this you?" And I was like, "No. Does that matter?" And. Usually luckily they get it. I think it's only once where the person didn't understand that I was being sarcastic, you know? Because you know me, like I'm the type of sarcastic where I'm like not aggressively sarcastic, but it's like I feel
it's like a dry humor. Like it's like you don't you don't go like, oh yeah, does it matter? Ha 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 ha.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
You're just kind of like, yeah, does it matter?
Does it matter?
Wink. Then you suck their dick.
Yeah. Right. I don't do it like that. I just kind of like, and I think that actually helps. I know that sounds weird, but oh, hello. He was attacking my feet. What a terrorist. No.
Yeah. Kill him.
Sorry, my cat Tama was attacking my feet, and my girl came to my rescue. She's my hero.
That's good. I'm glad she did. She saved you from that.
But I think
from that terrorist threat.
Part of what helps is because I respond quickly, and I'm whatever kind of like thing they say, I'm able to sort of come back with a quick enough quip with enough confidence where it's like, clearly I've been asked this a million fucking times. Then I think it makes it more believable to them, because then they're like, oh, okay, yeah, this is not the first time this has happened for him.
You have to seem, I feel like the best way to go about that is just seem tired of it. Like when someone says like, is this really you? Instead of you being like acting nervous, you have to just be like, yes, it is me. Like sometimes that.
But that's the thing. If you do it too over the top, then they're like, oh, he seems like a fucking teenager, you know, like, yes, it's me.
Of course, it's me, you fucking old man.
You fucking idiot. Well, I fuck you and your patriarchy.
I have a question for you that is unrelated to this, but sort of related.
What is it?
How do you feel about turning 30? Like the idea, the prospect of turning 30 in like the world that we live in?
It's weird. Like, I'd like to say that it doesn't scare me. I mean, I've still got a couple years to go. And so I kind of tell myself, like, I'm still youthful, you know, I've got a couple years to go before I'm 30, but then a couple years go by so fast now. I'm old enough to know that the time just doesn't slow up. So, on the one hand, it scares me because it's like 30, that means something. And then on the other hand, I'm like, but no. And like most of my friends are in their 30s and they're like chill and not any different to when they were 25, 26. Not really.
20 years ago.
Yeah, right. They're not like much, like, I feel like after you're like 24, 25, you kind of, more or less, that's it. You're that person. You can change, don't get me wrong, and you get smarter. Hopefully over time you get wiser and you stop caring about certain things that don't really matter, but overall you're kind of that person, right? And I think maybe because I am getting wiser, I'm realizing now that being mature does not mean not being silly. You know, I feel like being mature is not like being serious, because being serious is not being mature to me. It's just being boring. And you could be serious, young or old. Being mature, I think, to either way I'm looking at it now, is like is being wise, being wiser. But I know I'm still going to be silly. And a lot of my heroes, you know, whether in music or in comedy, like I look at someone like, you know, Conan, and he's as silly as like now as he was like 10 years ago, 20 years ago, you know? Yeah. And I'm like, oh my God, this is like exactly how I feel. Like, well, I'm so scared to lose my silliness. I think that's what I'm afraid of. And then I realized, well, I don't need to sacrifice it. It's not like when you turn 30, the government like knocks on your door and they're like, all right, so we're taking your silliness permit away from you now that you're 30, and now you're just gonna have to sort of sit on your front porch in a rocking chair and just kind of like you know, puff on a pipe. So I'm less scared when I really sit down and think it through. Sometimes I catch myself thinking like, oh no, you know, especially because we're hip hop artists, and a lot of times people are like, this is a young man's game, but I don't think so. I actually have some thoughts on that. But before I share those, what are your thoughts about approaching the big 3-0?
Honestly, I would say that it doesn't bother me like in the slightest now. Now, it does bother me in like a few little things that were just like insecurities that really don't have to do with my age and more about like how I'm perceived.
Gotcha.
But okay, in my like, let's say like, I feel like, let me give you a little timeline of like from 25 to now of like how I felt about aging. From 25, I remember feeling like I don't have enough time. Like I have a certain amount of time that I have to like like things have to work out as a musician for me to be like happy. Like, I'll say like from 25 to 26, I felt like, oh, I'm getting older. And I remember like you can even hear it in some of my songs and stuff. Like I have this bar in Rain where I say like I'm 26. No, it's not Rain. It's in Buckets where I say I'm 26 now. I'm too old to fuck up. And now I like listen to that. I'm like, Jesus Christ, like 26 is young. Like when you think about it in the grand scheme of things, like. Yeah. But I felt like I was like, damn, like if I don't make it now, or if I don't like find my place now, then I'm never going to find it. And I'm just going to be sad all the time. And then 27, I feel like things were on the trajectory for things to start like working out. But I was really afraid of turning 28. Like I was like, damn, like 28, you know? And then I hit 28 and then 29. When I turned 29, we had already, I wasn't full time yet. Was I? Yeah. No,
yes,
I was.
You were.
Why am I saying that? Yes, I was for a while.
Yeah.
Then when I turned 29, it didn't bother me at all. Cause at that point I was like, damn, I'm like rapping and that's like what I do for a living. And that was really like what bothered me, not aging, but feeling like I was missing
the sense of
chance to do like what I wanted to do.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. And now, like, and my mom would always say stuff to me like, wow, like you're almost 30. And it used to freak me out. And now I just don't give a fuck at all.
Yeah.
Like, but I feel like the more I give a fuck about it, the more it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy. If I sit around and mope about, oh, I'm getting older, then I will then feel older and be perceived as older.
I think the reason it's so easy to perceive yourself as getting older is because as you get older, you have more points of reference. So like when you see people like discover things that you already knew before and they act like they're seeing it for the first time, that's a reminder. When there's humor that a lot younger people sort of share around and it doesn't hit you, that's a reminder, you know? And it's and being in the hip hop space where, you know, every year the XXL freshman list has at least one or two fucking 18-year-olds or 19-year-olds on their list. These things all act as reminders. You know, Nas was like 16 or 17 when he wrote most of Illmatic, you know, and that's it. That's all he needed to do. That's his Bible, you know, and look at this person who was super successful and very young, like look Earl Sweatshirt and stuff like that. So as you get older, you're bound to come across more and more like people hitting the news like that, where they're like young and very accomplished, you know, because no one it's very rare that someone in their mid 20s or late 20s or early 30s break some sort of ground artistically or entertainment wise, and people go like, despite being in their late 20s or you know, like, believe it or not, in his early, it's just, it doesn't wow people as much as like, wow, there's like this young kid who made a classic. And I feel like it's growing. If you start to understand that that's just bound to happen, the longer you're around, the more points of reference you'll have, and the more likely you'll see younger people like succeed or do things, or you know, things happen, then I think it can be okay. I think it's okay to be reminded of your age if you just don't like I don't know, make it weird for yourself. Like, don't be scared of your own age, you know?
Yeah, definitely. And I think one of the things that made me kind of, I had this like weird shift in perspective last year, and I was thinking about Danny Brown and how Danny Brown didn't really, I mean, he was like bubbling in Detroit for a long time, but he didn't really like have his breakout until 30 when he was 30, you know? And I remember thinking when I was, that record came out, when we were like, I was 20, maybe 21.
Right.
Like what, 2010, 2011, something like that. I can't remember.
Something like that, right? Yeah.
And I remember hearing it, and then like everybody was like, "Oh yeah, he's 30," and because it was something that he brought up a bit, you know, the record, the name of the record is 30, you know, and I didn't even sort of think that was weird, you know, but I had this like weird, unrealistic expectation that I put on myself that was different than that. And now I'm thinking about it like, I really don't care how old someone is. I don't really care anything about their background, as long as they're not like fucked up or something. I can listen to something and not care. I'll listen to like Griselda now, and those dudes are all a little bit older. I
exactly.
listen to like
Jay-Z. Think about Jay-Z.
And those aren't people that I knew. Like, I didn't know who Westside Gunn was.
Yeah, right.
Prior to just like last year, really, like at least listening to him, and I've never been like, wow, this dude's hella fucking old,
right?
And I don't want to listen to it.
And same with Hov, and like Hov, for many reasons, for me, like is a great example. Someone who blew up in his late 20s, right, or got success in his late 20s, but is someone who's also, in my opinion, arguably at the peak of his craftsmanship. He's in rare form, and he's like twice my age. And that's exciting to me. And same goes for like other people who are a bit younger, but still like older than me, like Aesop Rock, where it's very reassuring. And I see that like, wow, they're pushing it further and further, and they're so good. And I don't listen to them and ever go like, why are they still rapping, these washed up old men, And I think that's the point I wanted to address earlier. Is it's really strange that we find ourselves in this sort of world where we ask artists and entertainers, and probably more so I would say like rappers and comedians get this the most. We're like, okay, so when are you gonna hang it up? Nobody asks an astrophysicist, okay, all right, when are you hanging up your astrophysics? Nobody asks like someone who's breaking ground on fucking quantum mechanics, like, hey, it's really cool that you're like really changing the world and everything and all this and breaking ground quantum mechanics, but you're getting a little old. When are you gonna stop? Why are we doing that with anything else?
I think prior to kind of recently, people have looked at like there's a natural life cycle of a rapper,
but that's because rap is young, right? If you think about it, like most people who invented rap are still around.
Yeah, no, yeah, 100%. Like I agree with you, but I think my counterpoint though would be, we've seen so many people who get super famous, and then it's like they just quickly burn out, or they kind of slowly just stop releasing music as much. And it becomes a point where they feel like, and I'm not saying this with everyone, but I think more rappers than people would think probably either fall out of their element or stay in like stuck in doing one thing over and over and become almost a parody of themselves. And I think that's with almost any music, like not just rappers, but I think because it's such a young genre.
Almost with any art, you could argue, right? Like,
yes. Yeah, any art. Yeah, for sure. I think that the reason why particularly rap and rappers are pointed out in this is like either you become a legend and you carve your lane and you can keep doing that forever, or now this is not how I actually think, but this is how a lot of people at least thought, I think maybe 10 years ago, was people thought you become a legend and you can kind of do whatever you want and you can live off of the success of your earlier records and you can keep making records, or you could just stop and just be rich, or you fade into obscurity and you become a has-been. And I don't think that that's necessarily, I mean, that does happen to people. That's a thing that still happens to people. There's rappers that I loved in the mid 2000s that if you listen to their stuff now, it's like getting way less views and it's not, but I don't think that makes it any less valid. I just think that is a thing that happens to people.
Yeah.
But
right.
I think that if you're good at rapping and you stay good at rapping, then you should just keep rapping. I think you should keep rapping regardless. If you want to make music, make music.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not about how it's perceived.
And some of my heroes, like Jay-Z, was rapping from like early 90s or even late 80s. Same goes for Q-Tip and Tech Nine. And there's been so many people who have been there sort of like so it's like from the beginning, you know, almost, and they continue to push it, and at no point was I just like, not to say that every time they did something it was a hit, but that's not like that's the case with everyone. I don't think anyone has a perfect, flawless track record, you know. But to see that so many people have been doing it. Like Doom. Take Doom, for example. That's a great example. That's someone who started late 80s, who was in music videos since the early 90s. He was a kid.
Yeah.
He was a kid. He was a prodigy. Don't get me wrong, an absolute prodigy. But he made a name for himself as a kid, as a teenager. Then all the way into his adulthood, and now like we're gonna stick around with Doom until he retires. And
but I think that he kind of fell into that like he became a legend. Like that's kind of what I mean. Like he became a legend, and like Doom could make the same music that he's making right now, theoretically, until he dies, and I'm sure that he will have a fan base who is like, fuck yeah, I'm into this,
because it's so good, because it's so high quality, because it's so polished. You know, it's like it's certain things die out, certain things fizzle out because they are of the time. And I feel like music can be of the time, but a lot of the times the artists can adapt to whatever new time they are. They can grow. If they can grow with the times, then I think they're more likely to achieve the status that you're referring to, like this legend or whatever, right?
Yeah. But I also think that like he's created himself an outlier to make what he wants to make, and that I think that even if he made a bunch of records that I think are bad, people would still like him because he is who he is. Yeah. I think that's fine. But I think that he probably wouldn't. I think that Doom will probably always be good at rapping and producing, you know, just because he is. I don't think that's the thing that you get. That style, I don't think you get worse, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, exactly.
I think it aged very, very well. Jay-Z, I feel very similarly about.
Definitely.
Like, I mean, there was a couple of records where, like in the mid 2000s, where I just not that I didn't like them, but I just didn't care for them as much.
Same here. Yeah, same here. I feel like now he's better than ever.
Yeah, no, I think for sure. For sure. Like, I think he's found a very comfortable pocket and knows what to do to make himself better and who to surround himself around.
Definitely.
It's basically like the I hate always come back to Eminem, but it's like the anti-Eminem. Like I feel like Eminem is around the wrong people, trying to do the wrong things, and like isn't hitting all those notes how he used to. Whereas Jay is around the absolute best people that he could be around. Yeah. Best producers, timeless. He can make timeless stuff. And then on top of that, he's also got good taste when he writes things.
That being said, you know, like Eminem is also around The Alchemist, you know, and yet Jay went ahead and made a great song with Alchemist on his latest album. Anyway,
but it's like, is Eminem even really around The Alchemist like that? Like, is he really like around Alchemist?
You know what? I doubt that that's the case anymore. By the way, Alchemist just dropped a new album with Freddie Gibbs.
I know. I'm gonna listen to that shit as soon as we get done.
Yeah, I heard one of the songs and it sounded crazy. I can't
Something else just dropped too. Oh, it's a new no, it had a Tyler collab on it. Oh, new Lil Yachty too.
Yeah, that's right. The new Lil Yachty drop. That's right. Yeah. Bill, what
probably
would be
try listen to both of them?
If you could, if you were facing 20 or 21-year-old you right now, right? And you could tell him something with your wisdom and the knowledge that now you have, what would you tell yourself? And say it as if you're talking to yourself, you know, say it like that.
I would say, let's see how I can word this. Don't stress out on yourself. Like, don't stress about what you're doing, but also remember things don't happen unless you make them happen. That's what I would say. I would say don't sit here and put yourself in a mode where you can't be as good as you can be because you're worried about perception. But also remember that if you don't make a thing happen, it will never happen.
Yeah. That's good.
And that's what I would say. That's what I would say to myself right now. I think that's what people should say to themselves all the time.
Yeah, no, 100%. That's very good. I like that. Yeah, for sure.
Also, I would say die before 2020. You know, like just miss 2020 or like put yourself in a coma for 2020.
Oh,
That's
come
what
on,
I would
Bill.
say.
We're alive for the season finale of humanity.
Of Earth.
Right.
Yeah, dude.
So
Yeah,
it's gotta mean something.
It's a
At least
scary time,
our
man.
names might be in the credits.
Also, maybe, you know,
Yeah,
probably not.
probably not. No.
Who do you think would be on the credits of Earth?
No one. No one.
No one?
No, I don't think so.
I think
Because
okay,
if
I think
all
that's
is gone,
dumb.
then nothing matters, right? Because nothing
No,
matters
but
without a point of reference.
we need credits, dude. You can't just have like humanity, like the credits of humanity just be blank. Like I'm thinking like this. I'm thinking like
Master
I'm thinking
P.
they should put Master P, Jesse the Body Ventura.
Yeah.
Put him in
Body
there.
Bess.
Big Body Bess. Put him in there too. Put in
Yo, you know what?
put in Triple H. Put Triple H in there.
Yo, if God exists or existed, I would have loved for him to look and sound like Big Body Bess. And like Big Body, like God's like, actually Big Body Bess is like, I made him in my image and my accent.
That'd be so fucking funny. Like you just like like God enters the room and it's
Yeah.
just like light floods the room and like mist and everyone's like, oh, don't look at him directly or it'll blind you. You
Yeah,
know?
yeah.
And he just like he walks in, he's like, the fuck's going on in here?
Yeah, like you can hear.
Yeah, I think. What do you think? God, if God were to exist,
He'd wear Timbs.
what do you think he would be like?
Nothing like us. I would hope.
That's yeah.
I would
that is
hope.
my.
I would hope
that is
nothing
my,
like us.
I think that I don't know. I've always been at war mentally with like my religious standing because I was brought up Southern Baptist Christian, you know, and
Baptist.
I've always been of a fun Methodist. You can get drunk a little bit Methodist.
You can't spell
Later
Methodist
in
without
life.
meth.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, Methodist. I will say, as someone who was brought up Southern Baptist and then switched to Methodism, like when I was like 12, we started going to a Methodist church. Methodist church is definitely more fun than
More
Southern
theatrical.
Baptist. Yeah, it's more theatrical. The singing's a little bit better. I don't know. Maybe it was just the church I was at was like more old people, and there was like
Gotcha.
young people in that one, and it was kind of tight. But I will say, like, someone who came up as that, but like I've also like kind of rebuked a lot of things that's in Christianity because
course.
like I don't really dig homophobia. Or
Racism.
like just a lot of racism, or like just general I think people
xenophobia and all that. Yeah.
yeah, I think people can eat shrimp. You know, whatever,
And
bro.
pork.
I don't care.
I mean,
you know?
I you know me, I'm an atheist, but I've gotten to a point where I like to talk about, when I talk about God, I look at it from an artistic standpoint now. You know what I mean? I look at whatever my discussion of God is as a reflection of myself. Because what I want God to be, or what I want to see in God, is what like is a reflection of my insecurities and wants and needs and all that. You know, it's a reflection of my
Oh
subconscious.
yeah, of course. I feel like I've kind of like fallen more into this idea of like I hate people who say, and I'm gonna say it anyway because I feel like that's what I am. Is I hate people. I'm not religious, but I'm spiritual. But I do kind of have this like less of an idea of like a physical thing that exists that makes things happen. But I do kind of believe in a. you can't say I believe. I say what I have faith in.
Yes.
Like a fate or a thing that almost like this guiding hand of the universe that makes things happen that is completely unprovable, completely like obviously like whether that thing exists or not, it's happening. Like the thing will happen.
That's the point of faith, right? It's unfalsifiable. Is that it's faith because you can't prove it right or wrong, and the moment you can, it's no longer faith by definition.
Yes, and see, this is where things get weird for me. Okay, because I am a believer in this thing that doesn't exist. This thing that doesn't exist and doesn't matter if it exists. I believe that in my head that there's this thing, a God, if you will, but it's more of like a force that does not give two flying fucks about us. That's kind of like my, almost like this inherent thing that is a part of nature that just like, okay, for example, like all the like strange little coincidences that happen to make us who we are today. Like, obviously that could just happen through coincidences, but in this weird artistic way, perhaps something guided it to be what it is, you know?
Yeah.
So I don't really believe in creationism, but perhaps like this guiding hand through nature that is a part of nature. And I know that seems kind of weird.
Does that help you? Do you believe in it? That because you kind of do you worry that if that were not the case, that what do you have any concerns if that, for instance, let's say some sort of valid information somehow came about that like, no, you're wrong. There isn't a guiding force.
Like if there was like. I like if there was some kind of weird, like, I don't know what could be the valid information to disprove this thing
let's say we get information that like, oh my God, no, wow. So we are actually a simulation of another universe where they reached the point of
like an actual scientific thing of like why we exist.
It's just like holy shit, we are an actual simulation of another world that, for as far as we know, they might be a simulation as well, right? Who knows? But they got to the point where their universe became self-aware. The technology progressed to the point where they were able to simulate life and the universe, and we are that simulation, but they are hands off with it, you know. They just like they fed this computer the right numbers, they fed it the right properties, physical properties and everything, and just kind of let it go. And they fast forwarded that shit, and it's fast forwarding to them right now, and they're just scanning it, right, and trying to get the most information. But relative to us and how everything's working, it's like time is moving the way that it is for us relative to us being on Earth going around the sun. And it's hands off. It's just, again, that for sure we know there's no control. Yes, we were made or we were programmed, but there is no guidance. This is just like pure chaos. This is a result of a mathematical equation and certain physical properties like coming together and making everything what it is. With that, how do you think you would perceive that information? Or like, how would you look at it? What would your thoughts be?
I think it's less about what I actually would believe and what I want to believe.
That's
I think
right.
it'd be, because it's less about, to me, it's less about, like, what you're talking about is beautiful in its own way. Like this absolute chaos.
Yes, exactly. That's what I prefer.
Came from that. That is gorgeous. When you think about everything, this like weird, perfect, like we don't have this, like, obviously, like, society's not perfect, but like we're not animals, and we have it better than animals would.
Or we are animals, but we are self-aware. We're at the point of imagine if to me, what's beautiful about it is like, I imagine, to me, as far as I see it, everything is just pure chaos, and somehow this universe got to a point where it's little chemicals and everything arranged to be us, where the universe is self-aware, where it's like, oh wow, I exist, you know. And to me, that's so beautiful, where like it didn't have to happen. There's
that 100%. I 100% agree with the beauty in that, But it's also sad because then we are truly alone. Like not alone
but
in a
what if
sense
there are
of
others, life forms out there that are reaching very similar conclusions to us, just maybe a distant
that's not what I
systems.
mean. That's
okay,
that's something different entirely.
Okay,
what
okay.
I'm saying is when I'm alone, I'm alone.
I see.
And that scares me. The idea of being by yourself and you're speaking to yourself in your head, but only your head can hear it. That's freaky to me for some reason.
But
the
what
idea
if you're
of
not alone? What if wherever you are the universe. You are part of the universe. You are cosmic dust, and you will always be cosmic dust. And
I mean, yeah, but that is going to happen, at least on this plane of existence.
Sure. Yeah.
Like, of course, that is going to happen. Like that doesn't really weird me out. Like the idea, even the idea of no afterlife doesn't really weird me out because it has a kind of poetic, like
it's like pre-life.
It's like all this buildup, and then it's just kind of like.
Yeah, and it's not
peace,
like before you were born you lamented the time like, oh, it was terrible, I didn't live, it really sucked.
Yeah, no, that doesn't even really freak me out. Like honestly, like the afterlife, the idea of afterlife used to scare me because of the idea of hell, which
unknown.
sounds terrifying.
Yeah, it does.
But I don't. That doesn't really weird me out as much as this is like a thing that I do. Every night, like before I go to sleep, if I'm awake enough for that, I always like say like a prayer of some sort to whatever's out there. And it's more of a comfort thing for me, just something I do because I don't really think like if you like speak to the air that it makes things happen or doesn't make things happen. But it's kind of like it helps
words.
me kind of like, it also kind of helps me like, it's almost like a meditation, but also in a sense of like
meditation. That sounds like meditation.
Yeah, it's like almost like that, but it also kind of it's like a meditation, but without blanking out. It's more of a what is important to you, or reminding yourself what is important to you.
I think that can be meditation too. I think a lot of people have this understanding of meditation, and it was probably through cartoons and television where we just imagine them like, sitting a specific way, closing their hands and going closing their eyes and just like as if they leave their bodies or something, right? But I don't meditate like that. I meditate in ways that are similar to what you're saying with your prayers. Yeah, I go No, I remind myself what's important, and to me that's part of my meditation. I take a deep breath, which I think helps no matter who you are, just once in a while, and like just reflect, briefly reflect, and remind myself what matters to me. And I think for some people that comes in the form of prayers, but I don't think it's very different. And I think that's beautiful too, right? That ultimately, whether, you believe in a God or not, we seek inner peace. And I know what you mean about the whole like when you're alone, you really are alone. I can see why that would feel weird. I don't know if you've ever done this, but have you ever been around people and you're thinking things in your head and you're like, oh my God, but what if one of them can read my mind right now? I used to do that all the time as a kid, right? Where I'd be like...
Yeah, all the time I used to. Now I don't at all. But
not at all, yeah. But I used to as a kid, and I used to even apologize in my head. I was like, that's a joke. I would never actually think that,
Right.
And it's funny because we want to be... We I don't know, it's weird. Like we want to be free and we don't want anyone to intrude to our heads. And yet for some reason we yearn for this also like big brother type figure for affirmation, For a long part of my life, I thought in my head as if I were in a TV show and I was the protagonist, Where it's like sometimes I would, even when I were by myself, I would say things out loud that I didn't need to, but I was mouthing them as if like, a camera was panning around me. And like, sometimes I think, what if in the future they'll be able to collect all the things we ever said, because it's just like, it's waves, that kind of wavelengths that spread and they kind of dissipate. But what if they don't ever dissipate? They're tiny and they can somehow reverse engineer them and find out that what anyone has ever said. And I was like, oh my God. And so I was doing this thing where like, if I thought a horrible thing, I would then mouth a thing that would like forgive myself. to me, the idea of someone listening to me or being there, actually kind of terrifies me, because I like privacy in the sense that I want to be able to have flawed thinking and learn and grow without not growing from fear. And I think as a kid growing up, who was also for a part of my life religious, I would regret thinking certain things because I thought I'd go to hell or that God was listening, and not because the things I was.
Reminded me of something really funny.
Yeah.
Sorry. I went for like 2 years of my life thinking I was going to hell because I watched a rated R movie.
I mean, you are. That's how it works.
Let me tell you the story, dude. So, okay. So I was like 11, and my my grandma had what is it? Like, not HBO, but like Cinemax.
Right.
And she had HBO too, right? And I never like stayed up late, so I never like saw like Skinemax, like the softcore porn or anything like that, until like much later in life. But I remember one of my first interactions, not my first interaction with nudity, but like I remember I would scroll through. They didn't have like they had satellite TV, so it wasn't like cable, so you could actually see like the ratings of movies and stuff. And I remember being like 11, I wasn't supposed to watch rated R movies, and I watched one, but I was like scrolling through, and it would say like why it was rated R. So it would be like L for language, V for violence, N for nudity, right?
Gotcha.
And I saw the N, and I was like, there's no way they have just like nudity like on TV. You know, and I watched this movie. There's this Bill Murray movie called Stripes. Have you ever seen that?
I don't think I have. I love Bill Murray though.
Yeah, everybody loves Bill Murray, man. But
true that.
But sorry, I just got distracted thinking about the time I met Bill Murray.
Oh wow. Okay. Flex.
We'll talk about
Humble
that later.
brag.
But
sorry, it was just reminiscing
dude, I was
fond memories with Bill
9.
Murray. Sorry.
Now I have to tell that story before I get to the reason. Okay, the reason I'll keep it brief. He owns the River Dogs, which is a like minor league baseball team in Charleston.
Yeah.
And sometimes he'll just walk around the River Dog Stadium or whatever. And I remember bumping into him when I was 9, and it was right after I saw that movie Osmosis Jones, and he had been in so many things like Ghostbusters and like all this other stuff that was like really famous. But when I bumped into him, I said, "Oh my God, you're the guy from Osmosis Jones." And
wow.
It's just funny that
That's cool.
Yeah, that was the thing. I bumped into him twice, like twice.
I'm very jealous.
That's pretty cool.
He was my like fucking hero. Space Jam.
I mean, I was too young. I didn't even remember he was in Space Jam because he wasn't like the main character of Space Jam. I would just be like, yeah, Michael Jordan's in Space Jam. Sorry, I got distracted. So basically, I watched this movie Stripes, and that movie has like, it's like almost like American Pie level nudity. Actually, there's more. There's like full front. You see Bush in that movie, right?
Yeah.
And there's like a mud wrestling scene, and there's like it's you know, like one of those kind of movies is like almost like American Pie or Animal House, like that type of movie. And it has like a lot of titties and ass and apparently a little bush in there, you know?
Yeah.
And I saw it and I was like, holy shit, oh my God, you know? And then like I felt like guilty for watching it and not, you know, like I was just guilty. I felt guilty. Like I was like, oh man, I watched that movie I wasn't supposed to watch, you know? And then I said to myself, my thing was like, you could swear. All my friends would be like, yeah, I swear blank. And then if you broke that promise, you're just like breaking a promise. But if you say, I swear to God, the idea was that if you break that promise, you go to hell. Okay. And I said to myself, I swear to God, I'm never going to watch another rated R movie until like I'm old enough to watch one. And then like 2 weeks later, I was scrolling through and I watched one, and then I was like, fuck, I'm going to hell. And for like 2 years, I thought I was going to hell.
Yeah, it's happening.
It's a real thing that happens.
It's definitely something that's going to happen.
Yeah, no, like it'd be really funny. Like like I get to heaven.
You get to the
I get to
pearly
the heaven's
gates.
pearly gates.
Yeah, and the
and he's just like
bouncers are
chilling
there.
up there, and he's just like, yeah, you can't make it in. And I'm like, why? Was it because like all the fucking drugs I did in my 20s, or like I don't know, that time I got in a fight with somebody, or
that
something
dungeon
like
thing
this,
you
or like
had.
this. Yeah, the dungeon thing that I had, that whole thing, my sex dungeon. And he's just like, well, you did swear to God you wouldn't watch a rated R movie, and yet I see that 2 weeks later you watched American Pie 2.
I imagine it's a bouncer. Like, it's a bouncer who's just like going through the thing like, buddy, nope. I don't
Big
fucking
Body
think
Bess
so.
is at the gates. He's
fucking
also
think
God,
so.
but like bouncer form.
Yeah, he slaps you around
At
with
the
his
gates.
left Tim. He takes it off and then slaps you around with it, and tells you
Mayhem
to.
Loren is there, like
He
he's
tells
just
you
there.
to fuck off. Yeah, he's like fuck off.
What were we talking about?
Yeah, well, we were.
You were saying going to hell scared you. That was it.
Yeah,
the idea
exactly.
of like when religion.
The idea of hell scared me, as opposed to the idea of like I'm doing something that's hurting someone else, and I'm not exercising empathy. I'm not putting myself in this other person's shoes. And if I were that person, and they were doing this to me, I would think it would be unjust, right? And it's like, and it's just not the kind of world I want to live in, and hopefully not the kind of world I want to leave behind. And fear was just not the right methodology, in my opinion, for me to really grapple with those ideas. You know, I feel like people who need to be taught through fear are those who are unable to. I feel like religion should be the last resort, or religion should be like if you just are incapable of empathy yourself, and you're incapable of reason and learning and you know, like acquiring wisdom, then perhaps fear is all that's left that can get through you. But if that cannot be the first front. You know, like, don't do bad shit because you want to go to heaven. Because that just sounds like a very selfish way to navigate your life, right? You want to do good because you don't want to be punished, or you don't want to do. You know, it's like you want to do good because you want to be rewarded. But why does it always come back to you ultimately, right? That was my problem.
there is this whole thing. And I also just never quite understood. There's some inconsistencies with God in the Christian Bible that I just kind of don't understand. And just for the record, if you're Christian, that's fine. Like I don't want to seem like I'm like bashing Christianity, but
no, these are just purely just our thoughts, guys. You're listening to a podcast called "We Don't Suck." Like, you know, take that with a grain of salt, whatever we say.
Yeah, what's wrong with that? What's wrong with "We Don't Suck"? Huh? You think that's dumb?
No, I think it's good. You were saying?
Right. So I was gonna say the thing I never could quite understand was like I was always taught that any sin is forgivable, okay, except for blasphemy, which I never could quite understand.
Yeah,
because
it's weird.
I think saying the phrase "fuck God" is definitely better than murdering someone and then asking for forgiveness for it.
Yes.
Right. And I never quite could understand why this person who is, this being that is taught, sorry, it just thundered really loud. Nice. This being that
You're about to get smitten.
Yeah, that's me being smitten, smoted.
Smoted.
I never understood the idea of this being that is supposed to be very understanding and loving of you. We're taught that God's grace envelops all.
Yeah, it's boundless.
He loves you.
Yeah.
But I'm sitting here thinking, why would he be so selfish? Why is the idea of like you have to be devoted to him? Why is this whole we have to worship? And I think my conclusion that I came up with is that everyone's just wrong about God. That was my first thing. I was like, he's not like that.
No, yeah.
And that maybe this was something that man misconstrued or was using for their own
I think it was used for fear.
Power-wise.
Absolutely, because like God being so egotistic in the Christian lore, obviously Old Testament, everything, all that makes sense. But in terms of the preachings, it's an inconsistency, right? And I think that's why Jesus is a far more popular figurehead in modern day Christianity than like non-Jesus God, I feel like because Jesus, you don't have to worship him, you can admire him for the life he led and for the preachings that he spread.
Yeah. Well, he was like one of us. Like he wasn't one of us.
He wasn't one of us, and yet he was, exactly. And I think, and because of that, like that sort of the ego is removed. Like if anything, Jesus was almost devoid of ego from what we hear, right? And so I absolutely agree, and I think that goes back into the whole fear thing. I think the reason like blasphemy was the worst thing is it was almost kind of like, there's certain lines you don't cross. And that just sounds like something where you instill fear in someone, I wouldn't be surprised if that were intentional. And, maybe at some point it was like a way for the church to sustain a semblance of power in a world where we had kingdoms and empires, and if you aren't born into a family that, is of God, then perhaps you could be a messenger. And that way you could climb up and survive and etc. It's just, now I think it's antiquated. Like that kind of religion, that kind of way of having religion is an antiquated form of religion, giving modern day like what we have now and how we live.
I really wanted to hammer something home real quick that I think is probably the best thing that I learned from Christianity. And I don't even know if you would. I still believe in this to an extent. I think actually not to an extent. I do. My mom was like really into the whole just idea of like, I don't want to say like what would Jesus do, but like asking yourself if like what you're doing is Christ-like, almost as a that I feel like is a good way, because it's not saying like, it's not like dangling this like fear of this being tortured for eternity if you don't act upon, I don't know, going to church a lot or something. Like it becomes this like Jesus ate with whores and with criminals, and he treated them no different. And I don't think that if a gay person was around Jesus, that Jesus would be like, well, fuck you. I don't think I don't think, I think the idea, even if Jesus wasn't like this, I mean, if he was just a normal man who just happened to be kind of a nice guy, the idea of just like, don't worry about what other people have got going on and just treat people nice and try to be the best person that you can, whether or not that gets you into floating sky heaven or not. I think that's good. And for those people who don't necessarily like weren't raised with the best moral compass, or like that wasn't instilled through their upbringing, sometimes that is something that can help someone in this situation. I think that, I know it sounds funny, but what would Jesus do is a pretty good, I think, in my head.
And you know what? I agree with you. And it's something that I apply in my life. Now, I never ask myself, what would Jesus do? But what I do is very similar.
You got like a WWJD bracelet on right now.
Yeah, exactly. I do. Yeah. No, but I have people I have great admiration for. I don't idolize people, or at least I try my darnest not to idolize anyone. But I do have certain people that I look up to, and I've grown up looking up to, and I look at them as sort of like, these are the kinds of people. They're making the decisions, and they're navigating their lives in a way that aligns with my beliefs and sort of what I aspire to. Now, as soon as they get canceled for, it turns out they have like a sex dungeon or something, right? Like, obviously, I'm gonna have to be very selective about the things I admire. But I never admire a person thinking like, oh, they must be a flawless person. But I admire, I guess, okay, let me paraphrase. I admire qualities in people, right? And there's certain people that I look up to, and I think to myself, like, well, would this person, what would they do? Would they say this? Like, my first impulse might be an angry one in a situation of some sort. But then I try to think to myself, well, this person who is very smart and accomplished, and there's a lot of qualities about them, including their patience that I admire. How would they tackle the situation? How would they react, right? And in reminding myself,
Stone Cold Steve Austin,
Stone Cold Steve Austin, which by the way is a stand-up fucking dude, and
great guy, dude.
And and that helps. And again, not idealizing people, but more so maybe finding qualities in certain people that you admire, and then trying to see, like, can you try to live up to those ideals yourself? To me, that is very similar to the idea of, like, what would Jesus do? Like, right? Like, what would this person that you think is well-tempered is, and in a situation of high stress and your first impulse is to react aggressively, if you stop yourself and you take a deep breath and count back from 10, while you're counting back, think to yourself, how would this person that you admire this quality in react in this kind of situation? And perhaps that's not such a bad way of living life.
Yeah, and sometimes you got to ask yourself, what would Kill Bill do?
Unlock the dungeon.